Xi Jinping is moving with quiet precision, playing a long game that stretches far beyond headlines and tweets. He is asking Donald Trump for something deceptively simple, a single line, a formal declaration that the United States opposes Taiwan's independence. Just words on paper. Yet those words could tilt the balance of power in Asia. At the very moment Xi is tightening his grip, Washington looks divided and hesitant. Trump has frozen $400 million in promised military aid to Taiwan, advanced drones, ammunition, systems Taipei urgently needs. Instead of clarity, America offers delay and confusion as politics and trade talks collide. Meanwhile, leaked documents reveal Russia training Chinese paratroopers, preparing Beijing's forces for an airborne assault on Taiwan. For the first time, China is importing Moscow's hard-earned battlefield experience, transforming its army into something more dangerous and capable. This is not posturing, it is preparation, carefully aligned with Xi's timeline to be ready by 2027. So the contrast is stark. On one side, China moves with patience and strategy. On the other, America hesitates, distracted by deals and internal fights. The stage is set for a contest where timing, language, and resolve could decide the future of Taiwan. Xi Jinping's demand may sound like a matter of language, but in diplomacy, language shapes reality. For decades, Washington has walked a careful line saying it does not support Taiwan's independence. Xi wants to push that line further. He wants Trump to say the United States opposes independence, a subtle shift on paper, but a decisive one in practice. The difference is huge. Not supporting leaves room for ambiguity. Opposing closes the door. It would hand Beijing a symbolic victory, narrowing Taiwan's space on the world stage and signaling to allies that the US may be willing to trade away principles for short-term deals. For Taipei, such words would sting harder than sanctions. They would undercut morale, weaken diplomatic outreach, and confirm what many already fear, that Washington's promises can change with the wind. Xi knows the value of timing. Trump is desperate for a grand trade agreement, something he can sell at home as proof of his deal-making power. In this hunger, Xi sees leverage. He offers patience, knowing America's political cycle moves fast while Beijing plays the long game. The United States has already shown cracks. Trump blocked $400 million in military aid this summer, even as China's military drills in the Taiwan Strait grew more aggressive. Words and actions are starting to align, and the signal is clear. Xi is tightening control over the narrative, while Washington struggles to keep its own story straight. The clearest sign of Washington's uncertainty came with the freeze of $400 million in promised military aid to Taiwan. The package included advanced drones, precision munitions, and support systems designed to strengthen Taipei's defenses against China's expanding military pressure. Instead of delivery, the aid was quietly stalled. The White House insists no final decision has been made, but the pause echoes Trump's 2019 withholding of security assistance to Ukraine, a move remembered as more about politics than defense. For Taiwan, the timing is disastrous. Beijing has stepped up war games in the Taiwan Strait, rehearsing blockades and missile strikes just miles from the island's coast. Yet as the threat grows sharper, Washington's response is to hesitate. Trump argues Taiwan is wealthy enough to pay for its own weapons. In his view, US aid should be replaced with sales, even if that means years of waiting for deliveries. Taiwan is already preparing to shoulder more of the burden. Defense spending will rise to 3.3% of GDP next year and is planned to reach 5% by 2030, a dramatic increase for an island of 23 million people. But money cannot buy time. Building new capacity takes years, while China's People's Liberation Army is on track to be ready for an invasion as early as 2027. The contrast is striking. Xi moves steadily, aligning words, drills, and alliances, while America under Trump stalls over dollars and deals. Taiwan is caught in the middle, watching as aid evaporates just when it is needed most, and Beijing gains confidence from every sign of US hesitation. On China's National Day, Xi Jinping chose his words with precision. Standing before the nation, he declared that Beijing would firmly oppose separatist activities seeking Taiwan independence and external interference. The message was direct, not only to Taipei, but also to Washington. For Xi, every US arms package, every transit stop by Taiwan's leaders, every new defense dialogue is now labeled interference. The shift in tone is important. Last year, Xi spoke of Taiwan in almost poetic terms, calling it part of a sacred bond of blood. This year, the softer language disappeared, replaced with sharper warnings aimed squarely at America. Xi is building the legal and rhetorical framework to justify stronger action if he chooses, framing China as the defender of sovereignty while casting the US as the destabilizer. The contrast with Washington is stark. Under Biden, Taiwan received over $2 billion in military aid, including $571 million in his final months. Under Trump, that stream has slowed to a trickle, with the $400 million package now frozen. Xi senses the hesitation and is moving to fill the gap, turning words into weapons and placing the US in a defensive posture before the contest even begins. Trump has told advisors that Xi Jinping personally promised him China would not invade Taiwan during his presidency. To Trump, that sounds like a guarantee, a handshake deal he can point to as proof that his relationship with Xi keeps the peace. But the reality is far more complex. For Beijing, this is not a promise of restraint. It is a statement of timing. Western intelligence assessments remain clear. The People's Liberation Army has been ordered to be ready for an invasion of Taiwan by 2027. That deadline falls just beyond Trump's current term. In other words, Xi gains freedom to accelerate preparations now while leaving Washington with a false sense of security. For Beijing, patience is strategy. And in the meantime, the pressure on Taiwan continues. War games in the Strait simulate blockades and missile strikes. Economic levers squeeze Taipei's trade routes. Diplomatic campaigns isolate Taiwan in the United Nations. These incremental steps, what analysts call salami slicing, weaken Taiwan without a shot being fired. Trump frames Xi's words as a victory, yet the cost of believing them may be high. While Washington delays, Xi methodically advances his timetable, building capacity with Russia's help and reshaping the battlefield before 2027 arrives. The question hanging over Taipei is simple. Has Trump traded away tomorrow's security for today's illusion of calm? The most alarming revelation comes from a cache of 800 leaked documents, independently verified by the Royal United Services Institute in London. They detail a secret deal between Moscow and Beijing that goes far beyond political statements or military drills. Russia has agreed to train and equip a full battalion of Chinese paratroopers, giving the People's Liberation Army an entirely new dimension of capability. Under the contracts, China is buying 37 BMD-4M light amphibious vehicles, 11 Sprut SDM-1 self-propelled anti-tank guns, and 11 BTRM-DM armored personnel carriers. All of them are being modified with Chinese communications and command systems. Russia will establish a repair hub on Chinese soil and hand over the technical manuals, allowing Beijing not only to maintain but to modernize this equipment for years to come. Even more striking are the parachute systems. Dalnodiot designs capable of dropping loads up to 190 kilograms from 32,000 feet, with a range of 30 to 80 kilometers. That means Beijing could airdrop armored vehicles and heavy gear onto open terrain far from Taiwan's beaches, bypassing traditional coastal defenses. Analysts even suggested targets like golf courses or fields near ports and airstrips, areas that could be seized quickly to allow follow-on forces to land. This is not theoretical. Chinese officers have already been dispatched to observe Russia's Zapad 2025 war games near NATO's borders. The plan is clear. Chinese paratroopers will first train in Russia, then a permanent training center will be built in China, staffed with Russian instructors. For Moscow, the deal is a lifeline. Access to Chinese money and technology to keep its own war machine alive in Ukraine. For Beijing, it is priceless. Real combat experience, distilled from Russia's failures and adaptations on the battlefield. Xi is importing not only hardware but doctrine, absorbing lessons from Ukraine to refine his strategy for Taiwan. Together, the two powers are rewriting the invasion playbook. And as Washington debates aid packages, Beijing is already preparing the tactics and tools to change the balance of power over the island. The consequences of America's hesitation extend far beyond Taiwan's shores. In Tokyo, Manila, and Canberra, leaders are watching carefully. Japan has already announced a record defense budget of nearly $56 billion for 2025, driven largely by fears that a weakened Taiwan would expose its own southern islands. The Philippines, once hesitant, has reopened bases to U.S. forces but quietly wonders if Washington's commitment is reliable when aid to Taipei can be frozen overnight. Australia, too, is hedging, signing new deals with Japan and India to prepare for scenarios where the U.S. steps back. The credibility of Washington's security guarantees is being tested. The Taiwan Relations Act obliges the United States to provide Taipei with the means to defend itself. If Trump discards that obligation in pursuit of a handshake deal with Xi, every ally will question whether America's treaties are just pieces of paper. Beijing understands this. By pressing for symbolic concessions while simultaneously building real military options, China is reshaping the psychological battlefield across Asia. For allies, the signal is clear. Beijing advances with discipline, while Washington drags its feet. That shift in perception alone can tilt the balance, drawing even neutral states closer to China out of doubt, not loyalty. Xi has turned Taiwan into the center of a larger game, one that tests America's credibility and reshapes the regional order. Military drills, diplomatic pressure, and Russian training all point to a single deadline: 2027. Every step brings Beijing closer to being ready, while US hesitation gives China more room to maneuver. This is no longer just about Taiwan. It is about who writes the rules of Asia's future. The question is simple: will Washington steady its hand, or will Xi's patience deliver him the prize without a fight? Do you think Trump will trade Taiwan's security for a deal with Xi? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.